Website www.mcu.edu.ng. Macpherson University, the home of champions.
Rockcityfm 101.9. The biggest news stories. This is Rockcityfm News.
The time is 5 o'clock. Here is the world news at 5. First, the top headlines. OGCEC to spend over 2 billion naira for the conduct of November 16 local government poll. Ogun ask residents of communities flooded by Oyon Dam water release to relocate. Tinubu in major cabinet shake-up sacks 5 ministers, appoint 7 new ones. Nigeria's external reserve surges above $40 billion, enough to cover import for 14 months. In foreign, Kamala and Trump exchange insults as polls suggest tight race ahead of November poll. Commonwealth leaders to defy UK on slavery reparations. Good evening. I am MODUPE AKINYOSOYE, bringing you the news in detail shortly. Now the news and details. Ogun State Independent Electoral Commission, OGCEC, is to spend over 2 billion naira for the conduct of the state November 16 local government poll. The commission says the over 2 billion naira budget is still tentative in view of rising prices of goods and services required for the conduct of the poll. The agency chairman, Babatunde Oshiboju, announced this at an interactive session with newsmen at a program organized by the state chapter of Nigeria Union of Journalists (NUJ) in Abeokuta. He gave the breakdown of the over 2 billion naira budget, as including 1 billion naira for the logistics, such as transportation on the day of the poll. Also, 200 million naira was voted for the printing of voter register from the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC). Oshiboju attributed the high cost of conducting the November 16 poll on the skyrocketing inflation, which had forced the commission to review the budget at least 6 times. For instance, he said the cost of logistics for the 2021 local government poll was 200 million naira, while printing of voter register cost 15 million naira. The OGCEC chairman also said the 70 million naira realized from the administrative charges imposed on political parties was grossly inadequate for the conduct of the poll. 8 political parties, including the ruling APC and major opposition, the PDP, are contesting in the poll. Governor Dapo Abiodun has assured that all parts of Ogun State would benefit from the developmental project in the 2025-2027 medium-term expenditure and the 2025 budget. According to the governor, the project would be evenly distributed to the state's 3 senatorial districts. He gave the assurance on Wednesday during the town hall meeting on the MTEF and proposed 2025 budget for the Ijebu division at the Bise Rodikpe Event Center in Ijebu. The governor, represented by Finance Commissioner Dapo Okubadijo, listed some routes approved for reconstruction in the axis, included Imori Mogun, Igbeba Eid Praying Ground in Ijebu. Others are Imori in Ijebu and Odelewu Ishiwo roads. According to the governor, over 600 kilometers of roads have been completed across the state, with 243.3 kilometers in Ogun East. He listed those completed in the area as Chris Ogumbanjo, Iruwon Palace, Ijebu Itili Club, and Balogun Kuku roads in Ijebu, as well as the reconstruction of internal roads at the Olabisi Onabanjo University, Agoiwe. The governor also said work has taken off on the construction of double culvert on Ajasan River, Ishiwo, as well as Liberty and Awokoya roads in Ijebu. Earlier, Budget and Planning Commissioner Olaolu Olabinton said 340 out of 377 input collated from the 2023 town hall meetings were included in the ongoing 2024 budget. He said the remaining 30 would be incorporated into the proposed 2025 budget. Ogun State government has directed residents of flooded communities affected by the recent water released from Oyo Dam in Abeokuta into Ogun River to quickly relocate to higher ground. Affected communities are Riverview Estate, Isheri, Arepo, Opik Estate, Warewa, Akute, Alagbole, and Magodo. The State Environment Commissioner, Rockcityfm, issued a directive on Wednesday in response to the flooding situation in the area. He said the state government was working with its Lagos counterpart to find a lasting solution to the perennial flooding. He, however, assured that the flood water would start receding significantly from Friday through waterways, watercourses, and canals dredged and provided by the state government. The resident electoral commissioner of INEC in Osun State, Dr. Mutiu Agbuke, has asked political stakeholders to cease attacking officials of the electoral body. He urged them to focus on issues and stop their personal attacks on INEC officials, which according to him was counterproductive. Agbuke, speaking during the 2024 press week of the Osun State chapter of the Nigeria Union of Journalists (NUJ) in Osogbo, said the personal attacks aimed at influencing the outcome of polls, which was misguided. He appealed to political stakeholders in the state to instead focus on monitoring activities of INEC as well as its modalities and the conduct of its officials. Agbuke also asked the stakeholders to address the issue of security threats before and during the election process. The State Information Commissioner, Kolapo Alimi, asked INEC to conduct fresh voter registration every 5 years instead of updating the register with newly registered voters. He said this would assist in removing the names of registered voters not alive. The Federal Executive Council has approved the scrapping of the Niger Delta Ministry and Sports Development Ministry. It also approved the merger of the Ministry of Tourism with the Culture and Creative Ministry. The decisions, according to the presidential media aide Bayo Nonuga, was taken during the weekly meeting of the council presided over by President Bola Tinubu on Wednesday at the presidential villa in Abuja. The responsibilities of the Niger Delta Ministry will now be taken over by the newly created Regional Development Ministry. The new ministry will now take over all regional development commissions, including those of the Niger Delta, Southwest, Southeast, Northwest, and Northeast regions. Also, the Sport Development Commission will now take over the responsibilities of the scrapped Sports Development Ministry. Meanwhile, President Bola Tinubu has sacked 5 ministers in a major overhaul of his cabinet. Those fired are Women Affairs Minister Barrister Uju Ken Onaneye, Tourism Minister Lola Dejan, Education Minister Professor Tahir Maman, Housing and Urban Development Minister of State Abdullahi Gwazu, and Youth Development Minister Dr. Jamila Ibrahim. The President also appointed 7 new ministers whose names would be sent to the National Assembly for confirmation. The new ministers are Bianca Odumegu Ojuku, Foreign Affairs Minister of State, Jumoke Oduwole, Trade, Investment and Industry, then Tawa Yomada as Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation. Former Defense Minister Lieutenant General Theophilus Danjuma says he's worried over the quality of Nigeria's political leadership. Danjuma said the quality of leadership is dropping. The situation, according to him, is more worrisome in the northern region. He spoke on the issue on Wednesday while receiving a delegation of the League of the Northern Democrats at his residence in Ikeja, Lagos. Danjuma asked political leaders to sit up and check the worrisome trend. For the visitors, he asked them to have a clear vision because they are up against corrupt political class with plenty of power and money who would fight them to retain their grip on the system. You are listening to the World News at 5 and Rock City 101.9 FM. Still to come, foreign, business and sport news. Please do stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. On the foreign scene, Kamala Harris and Donald Trump have been exchanging insults as the race for the White House enters the home stretch. On Wednesday afternoon, Kamala Harris stood in front of the vice presidential residence in Washington, D.C. and delivered a short but withering attack on her Republican presidential opponent. Calling Donald Trump increasingly unhinged and unstable, she cited critical comments made by John Kelly, Trump's former White House chief of staff, in a New York Times interview. The vice president quoted Kelly describing Trump as someone who certainly falls into the general definition of fascists and who had spoken approvingly of Hitler several times. Trump responded by saying Harris has a warped mind and is a threat. to democracy. The BBC has learned Commonwealth heads of government are preparing to defy the United Kingdom and agree plans to examine reparatory justice for the transatlantic slave trade. Reparatory justice for slavery can come in many forms, including financial reparations, debt relief, an official apology, educational programs, building museums, economic support, and public health assistance. The UK did not want any language in the communique about reparatory justice, but at the moment it is having to accept it will include 3 full paragraphs setting out the Commonwealth detailed position. Officials from CARICOM, the body that represents Caribbean countries, have sought to broaden the issue so that it encompasses not just the slave trade across the Atlantic, but also the Pacific. It also refers directly to practices known as blackbirding, where Pacific Islanders were tricked or kidnapped into slave or cheap labor in colonies throughout the region. Diplomats said the expectation now was that reparatory justice would be a central focus of the agenda for the next Commonwealth Summit in 2 years. In 2 years' time in the Caribbean, possibly Antigua and Barbuda. In business news, Nigeria's external reserve is still on the rise, hitting over $40 billion last Friday, according to the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN. The fund in the reserve was put at $40.2 billion against less than $35 billion a year ago. The Apex Bank's deputy governor in charge of economic policy, Mohammed Abdullahi, told potential investors on the sideline of the ongoing IMF World Bank meeting in Washington, D.C. He said they are targeting a $1 billion monthly inflow into the reserve to build a buffer to cover at least 14.3 months of Nigeria's imported goods and service, or 15 months of goods alone. Abdullahi said the diaspora remittance has risen from an average of $350 million monthly in 2023 to $600 million, with a target of $1 billion. Finally, in the World News at 5 Sport News, the International Federation of Football History and Statistics has announced the nominees for the Men's World Best Player 2024, with 2 Super Eagles forwards making the cut. Victor Osimhen and Ademola Lookman have made the 30-man shortlist. No other African player was nominated for the award, including the likes of Liverpool's Mohamed Salah, Bayer Leverkusen's Victor Boniface, and Real Madrid's Brahim Diaz. Previous winners of the prestigious award are Marco van Basten, Lothar Matthäus, Robert Lewandowski, Lionel Messi, and Erling Haaland. On the international stage, Osimhen and Lookman were key members of the Nigerian squad that reached the final of the 2023 African Cup of Nations, contributing a combined 4 goals and 4 assists. That was the World News at 5, and just before we go, the top headlines once again. We reported that OGCIAC to spend over 2 billion naira for the conduct of November 16 local government poll. Ogun asked residents of communities flooded by Oyon Dam water release to relocate. We told you that Tinubu, in major cabinet shake-up, sacked 5 ministers, appointed 7 new ones. Nigeria's external reserves surged above $40 billion, enough to cover import for 14 months. In foreign, we also reported that Kamala and Trump exchanged insults as polls suggested tight race ahead of November poll, and also Commonwealth leaders to defy UK on slavery reparations. For more stories and to listen to us live, please log on to our website www.rockcityfmradio.com. Thank you so much for listening. I am MODUPE. AKINYOSOYE. Good evening.